We are in Monteverde, Costa Rica, and we're on the Pacific slope right here. Our view vantage point when it's clear, we're looking out over the Gulf of Nicoya. We're at around 4,000 feet in elevation. Just a little bit higher up than us, going that way, is the cloud forest and what would be kind of considered the continental divide of Costa Rica. After that starts the Caribbean slope.
Yeah.
Here in the property, we're in a mix of rainforest and cloud forest. But a little bit higher up is the cloud forest, and that's why the majority of the visitors come to Monteverde is to see the biodiversity of the cloud forest.
What brought you here as well? Was it the biodiversity? Did you happen upon this gem? And
I came to the end of a long-term relationship in the United States. Yeah. Costa Rica was always on my map, and I'd studied something called Waldorf education.
Yeah, I know Waldorf education.
And I answered a job listing to be a Waldorf kindergarten teacher. So I worked in a community here doing that for a while. And because there's no military and Costa Rica is more in line with some of my hopes for the future, I decided to eventually stay here. I used to be a nurse. I would go back and forth, work as a nurse for a while in the US, and then finally I decided I'm going to stay here. And the initial idea of this project was to use tourism as a way to get people inspired to get engaged towards protecting natural environments and looking for ways to reduce carbon footprint and hopefully regenerate the natural environment. So because we're a tourist destination that's talking about biodiversity, it's easy to be like, hey, and this is how you can protect it.
Right.
These are some techniques that you might use back wherever you go to in the world. And one of the things we talk about is permaculture design. The reason we've used that as part of the vehicle is of talking about regeneration is because you can do permaculture in the middle of the city, you can do it in the middle of the country, you can do it in any environment. So it has that flexibility. So the hope is people might leave here, Google permaculture when they get back to where they're at in the world and find some project to get engaged.
That's great. And now zooming in then, this is how the land has become structured.
Yeah, so this is sort of like the core zone or the heart of the whole project is that we have a nature reserve. So altogether we have around 45 acres of land, some protection. And this is a map of our trail system. Our neighbors on this side and on this side are also in protection. There's around 4.5 kilometers of trails with different viewing spots. So the hope is that people will go out there, they'll engage with the natural environment and say, oh, wow, we really need to protect this. How can we work towards a viable future through understanding the natural environment? And so then we talk about permaculture. And so this, we have a self-guided permaculture tour. Permaculture is a design system, as I said. It has these 12 principles. If you follow these in building a house or a community or designing your activities for the day or designing anything really, most likely your project or your design will be regenerating the natural environment.
And you're offering some of those courses here?
Yeah, we have a sister nonprofit. So we're a hotel, a restaurant, the Nature Reserve, an organic farm, and then we have a sister nonprofit association that offers scholarships for people to come and learn about permaculture design. We also have greenhouses in different schools that we install, and then we talk to the kids about soil health and growing food. And then we also have a virtual library project where people can use QR codes here on site or just find us online and learn about different eco techniques. This is the foundation. So the first principle in permaculture is observation. And this is a type of observation in permaculture called a sector analysis. And what you do is you look at a property and you choose an arbitrary point, it's centrally located, and then you think about what different things are influencing, have an impact on the property. Mostly it's things that are moving through. So for example, this pie slice here is the direction most of the wind comes into the property during February and March, and then we get seasonal wind that comes in this way. This is how most of the fog enters the property, coming down a valley because of topography and that connection to the wind. This is where us humans enter and do our activities, make our noise. We have 2 potential landslide areas because of topography we need to consider. And then we have a huge wildlife sector because our neighbors on this side and this side are in protection. So this is part of the challenge of growing food. We have the world's fattest armadillos and agoutis and coatis walking around.
I saw the coati running across the yard today.
Yeah. And then the second principle is catch energy. So one of the main ways we catch energy, obviously, is the sun. So this is how the sun goes across the property in the summer solstice. This is how the sun goes across the property in the winter solstice. So that's how we decide to position our solar panels or our solar hot water heaters or our greenhouses or many, many different things. So the second principle, catch energy. So there is a self-guided tour where people can go and learn about each one of these 12 principles, or we do a permaculture tour here, and that's where a guide comes and talks about the ethics and the design principles, and then we go out and see the different things, which we're going to do now.
Yeah,
we'll go out
that's fantastic.
and walk around.
Yeah, I think people will be eager to see how you laid this out and the feel for the place. And we've only gotten a little glimpse of it ourselves because we came in late last night, so This will be a treat.
Yeah, so this is catching the energy of the rain. Obviously, you can see the two downspouts that come in there. This rain usually has a little bit of an acidic pH, so having all of this activity here in the pond helps balance that pH. There's I don't know how many different kinds of plants, probably over 30 that are growing here, and
kind of filtrating it as
they're
well.
filtering it, they're supporting the microbial diversity in the soil below this. These are not plastic lined, these are clay ponds, so there is a little bit of filtration happening, but you want that, one of the permaculture principles is integrate rather than segregate. So you want that integration between the microbes in the soil and the microbes in the water, the aquatic. And
exactly, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of burrowing things that
a lot
find
of
their
things
way
going
down
on.
there
There's
somehow.
fish in there. I don't know how many things are in there, but there's a lot. So that water, after it gets collected from the roof, goes through this little waterway. Another one of design principles in permaculture is expand your edge and also copy natural patterns. So we could have made this just a straight line to that pond over there, but we added that meander pattern that you see in all water movement. And what that does is it increases the edge. So there's more places for plants to grow, more places for all that interaction between different life forms.
May also, I mean, you might not have enough water flow here, but even when you see a small babbling brook, it not only increases the edge, but increases some of the oxygen level as it moves through. As it passes
when
through.
it rains hard, you can see there's movement going on.
Yeah.
And so then it gets to this pond here. The other thing that's great about this space in general is this one is one of the ways we integrate with the local community. So there's not a whole lot of flat spaces here in Monteverde. And over there you can see our bike station. So we hope that kids will come here, and quite often they do, learn how to ride bikes. And this place here is where the community sort of integrates together. So this pond is a place where I can't tell you how many shoes I've pulled out of here, how many parents have said, oh man, my kid is found the pond. It's no more than this deep, but they're constantly catching tadpoles and frogs. And so I think, in terms of early childhood education, playing with water is such an essential experience because, of course, we are, more than 70% water. And so how does that work is something that, part of the reason we have this here in this open area. So then the water goes through another exit over there, and it goes down to a bunch of greenhouses.
And so that's irrigating some of the greenhouses?
Yeah, it's all gravity flow. So the rainwater comes in, gets all of that life force after going through the ponds.
When was this founded? Because it would give folks some perspective of, growth here in Costa Rica is so different from the northeastern part of the U.S. because you're growing all season long. It's full of humidity and water and sun. So how long did this take? Like the water, the greenhouses? Give us a sense of, is it a decade, 2 decades? Well, no. So I became the owner here with a bunch of debt and some support in 2014. And that's when it all started. Okay.
One of the first things we did was bring in a bunch of dump truck loads to make this flat area. Because getting back to catching and storing energy, you can see solar panels there. You can see solar hot water heaters up there. You can see solar hot water heaters over there. And our greenhouses are also, so the sun rises, obviously, over there and sets over there. So that solar sector, getting back to the sector analysis that we were talking about just a moment ago, that really directs how we position a lot of things. But one of the things that really is amazing about the sun is that the sun sets right over here. By Christmas is as far as it'll get that way, and then June next year it'll be over there for the summer solstice. So we catch that sunset energy. Like a lot of people come here. a nice sunset. They're epic here. This will be just maybe 40, 50, 60 people. Sometimes we have music down here. Behind all of this, what we're trying to, again, is inspire people. And nobody's going to come here and say, that's an ugly view. Nobody's going to come here and say, that's an ugly sunset. That is how we're really trying to bring people together, by looking at the natural environment and saying, okay, this is beautiful, we need to protect it. You might have somebody who would come and say, Jonah, this is a great view. You need 60 more hotel rooms right here. Let's make some serious money. But that would definitely have a different impact.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the principles of permaculture. It's principle number 4 is accept feedback and regulate your designs. You have to be aware of your goals and how you're going to make a positive impact with your mission. And so it's a constant challenge because, of course, we need money to make this thing work, and tourism is the base of it. Yeah, this is what brings us all together.
Yeah, so this is a lot of the gathering spots as well.
Yep.
But you encourage people to go and explore with your trail system and stuff.
Yeah, so this is where most of the human activity is going on. So this is like, our human sector. And in permaculture, there are different zones.
Right.
During tourism, this would be zone 1 or zone 0, where most of the activities happen.
Yeah.
We have the restaurant there, we have the bar up there, we got the kids playing here. The great thing about kids is that they speak the language of play. So you'll have some Costa Ricans playing football with some Germans, playing with North Americans. This is, with a lot of traffic that comes through, that provides the opportunity to do a little bit of an education center. So this is talking about permaculture principle number 2, which is catching energy. So here we catch the rainwater off the roof. This water hyacinth catches the energy of the sun, obviously. Has tremendous root surface area, so that helps balance the pH of the rainwater. It cleans it, oxygenates it. And then inside here is a little worm compost. So we put in some compost up there. The worms get at it, and that liquid drips down here, drips into this wine barrel, and then that gravity feeds into this little greenhouse we built out of repurposed truck tires. And here we have some lettuce growing right now.
Yeah.
And if we need to pollinate something, this is a little stingless beehive. These are called Mariola bees.
We just saw those. We heard like their honey is delicious. Tastes a little bit like lemon, I guess.
It's really good, and it's highly medicinal. Yeah, it's really
really cool.
For cuts and abrasions.
So do you collect it? Do they make combs in the similar way that an Apis mellifera would, or?
Yeah, we get about a liter of honey a year.
Interesting.
And sell it mostly for its medicinal properties. It's very good for eye infections. So this is part of our virtual library. So people can come in, scan this QR code, and learn about what's happening here. Also, that connects to different shelves in our virtual library, where it might be water management or healthy soil or regenerative agriculture or permaculture design. So it's one of those entry spots. Over here, there's a little bit of a recognition of the indigenous history that we have, the rich indigenous history that we have here in Costa Rica. So this is a QR code that links to the different tribes that are here and some of the history. And these are replicas. We couldn't legally have real artifacts, but this is, again, using this common space to help people understand that there were people before, there are people here now.
Right.
And part of one of the reasons we talk about permaculture, in my point of view, is that permaculture is a way, I think, of helping sort of the modern world remember how we existed on this planet for almost all of human history, which was, in balance with where we actually were. An understanding of ourselves is that we were natural. I think that's one of the challenges we have right now, is that a lot of people think of nature as something out there.
It's easy to do that, though, when you live far away from it, or you feel like you're really isolated. And I think more and more people have isolated themselves just by the virtue of being in the city. I mean, we've even felt it, too. We've lived in a city. You've probably lived in a suburban or city area at some point, or at least visited it. And it's a stark contrast. It really is. Yeah. You don't know whether it's cloudy or, if you have a solar panel, you know when it's sunny and when it's not. You become much more aware of it. Yeah, for sure. And part of the whole thing behind this wealth is that that's a real symbol of it, is to live by yourself on a hill in a beautiful house. And we're social beings. We need each other to survive. To help you to remember to take your vitamins, or help you to remember to do whatever. So we have become isolated, and I think that's
that increases a sense of loneliness that can lead to potentially being scared of understanding more. So,
Yeah.
so this is a medicinal garden. Most of these plants we actually use to try and keep bugs off of other plants. We have a lot of different aromatics.
This is like a ruta.
Yeah, that's ruta.
Great
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
And some
And medicinal, used for a lot of
Lavender?
things.
pelargonium.
Yeah, lavender, yep, rose geranium, lemongrass, citronella.
So you brought in quite a lot
Rosemary.
of like plants that are traditional medicines. Are there ones here that are native as well that would be
Yeah, ruta
used?
is native.
Oh, is it
Yeah.
really?
As far as I understand it is, this is one that is definitely native. It's called Juanilama.
Juanilama? Mm-hmm. I like
Actually,
the name.
when I say definite, I can't be sure. Who knows the
Okay.
histories? Maybe somebody
somebody-
brought this here a
yeah.
long time ago. A lot of people think,
Put it in their skirt, you know.
yeah,
and-
a lot of people think that things are from Costa Rica, but actually the indigenous brought them from the Amazon, thousands of years ago. But this is a great calmative. It's helps relieve stress. It's very good for upset stomachs. It's just a nice tea in general. This also from
Mulberry?
Asia, mulberry.
Yeah.
Considered a superfood, actually. These very nutrition dense, a lot of nutrition going on in these. In Chinese medicine, it's used for teas and other things. From North America, it's not invasive here,
Yeah.
but it can be in some places in North America. But with climate change, we always need to be aware of like, okay, maybe some bird is going to start eating this, and that could change things.
That is one of the challenges, I think, with permaculture, and there's always like a couple schools of thought with that because, you know, we have some of the permaculture plants that have definitely jumped the fence and gotten into the environment. And I think here it's even more challenging because you don't get like harsh winters.
Yeah.
It could easily, like the forest is so close to the...
Yeah, and we are seeing animals up here that weren't here even as close, as 5 years ago. So, so most of these plants, as I said, they all have medicinal properties for human use, but a lot of these we use for making a product called EM5, which is where we cultivate microbes in really spicy chilies, garlic, onion, ginger, aromatic herbs, things that smell strong. And that selects for those microbes that can withstand that. And after that ferment is in a month or so is done, we use it as a spray on other plants to keep the bugs off them.
It's like almost like a compost tea, like a fermented compost tea.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than a compost tea. Oh yeah, I guess here we call them bioinsumos or bioferments.
Okay.
And so it's.
Is it more like bokashi? Are you familiar with bokashi?
No, bokashi is a Japanese soil amendment that uses some sort of manure. We use rice husks as one of our carbon sources. That's another type of composting where you got to monitor the temperature. Usually takes about 2 weeks. Bokashi is one of our main fertilizers we produce.
Yeah.
We can
because that gets fermented, and I remember like learning about it. Whereas like compost, you lose a lot of the mass, whereas bokashi because it's fermenting keeps it.
Yeah.
Yep. It's one of the benefits.
Yeah, bokashi we use that all over the place.
And they use microbes as well.
Yes.
You have to have like the little starter, like you're making a sourdough starter.
and we have a lot of we have something, it's like our masa madre. It's called solids, which is mountain microorganisms. It's a anaerobic process initially, but then we use that as sort of our base for a lot of other things like bokashi and other stuff.
So is it, one of the things that we have old growth forest where we are, and, is always like, if you grab a little teaspoon of that as your starter, like, can you do the same here? You go into the forest and just like... Yeah. So when we harvest microbes and then we cultivate them, we don't have to go out and harvest microbes all the time. So once we have that base, then we use that as our sort of our mother tincture to make other things. But we might go out with sacks and collect some soil underneath an old growth tree. We might collect some soil underneath the fence line, which is an interesting place to collect because that's less disturbed. We might collect some soil in a secondary forest part, and then cultivate those microbes. Lettuce isn't from Costa Rica, but if the roots of lettuce are growing within the microbial diversity of this biome, that lettuce is going to grow better adapted, more acclimated. So a lot of what we're doing here is microbes. Here in the tropics, we can get a lot of rain, and here in Monteverde specifically,
It can be over a couple of meters of annual rainfall. One of the things that you want to consider about that is your impact of infrastructure and your human space. The indigenous were never walking through here and building concrete structures. They were building 100% compostable structures that were gone, and then they would rebuild next year. So as a tourist destination, obviously we have to have nice rooms and a lot of infrastructure to keep those in place. So if I had a perfect square meter of surface area here, and I had just 1 millimeter of rain over a day or 2 days or 3 days, I could collect 1 liter of water. What that means is, with all our roof surface area here, we could fill about 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools within a year.
Within a year, okay. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. And what we don't want to do is, because of all this all used to be a sponge. This is where the rain would go in, and with all the life in the soil, healthy soil is actually 30% water, 30% oxygen, and then organic material and microbes and micronutrients and minerals, all that stuff. So this area used to be a sponge. It's no longer a sponge.
Right,
that means all of this is going off.
surfaces.
So what we don't want to do with this human structure is create a landslide somewhere else. So what we have to do in terms of design and observation is look at what are the historical points of water movement on a property and continue to use those. So all this rainfall that comes down here, there's one cleanout box there, another one here, another one over here. That all goes to this here. Then it gets into a big 12-inch tube. That goes to a ditch that then directs all of the water flow from these buildings to a point in the property where the water has always gone to. It's a rocky part of the mountain face. That way we can guarantee that we're using the historical topography in a way that's respecting how water has always moved across the property and not disrupting that to create a landslide.
Yeah.
And landslides are natural and they happen quite often, but if we can avoid those being human created, that's a part of responsible land stewardship.
Well, I've also noticed that you've kind of, and I don't know if this is part of the plan, you terraced some of the gardens, and I would imagine that the water could still flow through but get caught up in the gardens as well.
Yeah.
Considering that they're terraced.
Yeah. Okay, so here we're talking about, this is on our self-guided permaculture tour, we're talking about principle number 5, which is use and value renewable resources and services. And we're using our solar laundry as a way of talking about that. So again, our solar sector is moving across in this direction. And so here is where we collect some of that.
It's probably the best place to wash our clothes.
Yeah. We collect some of that at solar energy to help us dry clothes. Obviously, we have dryers and we need to use them, but that reduces the amount of dryer time. And one of the things that dryers do is they decrease the shelf life of your products. So towels start to fray along the edge and other things.
Just had a bed sheet in the dryer and I pulled it out and it was like torn and I was like, the dryer.
Yeah. So what we do is, I don't see any here, but we cut our towels when they get old and take them to a seamstress and put new borders around them and use them as face cloths or hand towels.
Fantastic.
We're never going to be a 5-star hotel, but that's part of his, waste reduction is repurposing things, reusing them until they don't work. So out of all the ways that we need to look at our damage to the natural environment, the laundry is a major one.
Yeah, huge.
This is where we're producing a lot of wastewater. The way that we manage that is by using these old washing machines. Well, these are new, but it's an old model. Here, these actually use a lot less water than the modern ones that you see in other parts of the world. Of course, we always buy the same model, so if something breaks on this one, we can use it on that one. We can get the same parts. Hola, buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
And then these are all from a company here in Costa Rica called Florex in San Ramon. And I can talk to the chemist, John Paul, and he can change these around based on what we want to work with. But these are all of our cleaning products, and these are all much more expensive than you would get at Home Depot or Costco or something like that in the States. But because they're biodegradable, they have don't have a negative impact on the natural environment in the way that other soaps.
So does this become a gray water system somewhere else on the property?
Yeah, we're starting here, so I'm going to go show you that.
Okay, yeah, show me.
The other way that we control this is right here. You guys can see this is our pump system.
It's very nicely, I think Sandra could appreciate this, it's very nicely laid out.
Yeah, so this is to make sure we're adding just the right amount of soap, just the right amount of fabric softener, so that we're not over giving.
Wow, so you're adding soap here.
Yeah, that pumps
Goes straight into the water.
into the washing machines. Yeah, so this is part of gray water management. So gray water is any sink, laundry, shower, used water, and then black water is water that's been used to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And we do have toilets here that are filled with rainwater. But sometimes I'll have a client that'll say, great stay, really like what you're doing, but you need to check out your plumbing. My toilet water is a little bit dirty. And I always want to say to them, why do you need to poop in perfectly good, clean, perfectly clear, water? It's just a sort of like, of course.
I think it's a cultural thing, or they feel like, something's coming up and this must be wrong.
Yeah.
But it's the education, and that's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, of course, we need infrastructure. We don't want to get cholera. We need big systems, but we could be using gray water to go to the bathroom. And I mean, to poop in perfectly good drinking water is kind of crazy because it's so hard to make it drinking water again. It takes so many external inputs to clean water after it's been pooped in.
Yeah.
So
you almost need just like a little placard, I think, in the bathroom. Is toilet water dirty?
Well,
Don't worry, that's normal.
I just want to say, I'm not going to go wash your roof 3 times a week just so you can poop in clear water. I don't have time to do that. The used water here moves out this way.
Is it filtered through like a pipe that goes somewhere, or how do you?
Yeah, so all of our laundry water goes through pipes in this direction.
Okay.
All of our shower waters goes through pipes in this direction. All of our kitchen water.
And that's all like happening underground, like under our feet right now.
You can see some right
see
there.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You can see some of the infrastructure. So this is a design that we came up with. This is a grease trap. So one of the things you always want to do is keep as much oxygen going on in your used water as possible so that you can have all of those aerobic bacteria doing what they need. If anybody's ever smelled a grease trap, part of the reason it smells bad is because that grease is decreasing the amount of oxygen that can get in there, which means anaerobics can grow, and those are...
Now, I visited a Waldorf school, Kimperton, I think, in Philadelphia, and part of their system, which I thought was really ingenious, and you might have seen these things, is that it kind of went through, they had the gray water moving through a really flow form system, and then at the end it kind of eddied like as like a little whirlpool, and it didn't go through any pipes, it just went through the earth the way that it was done, and it didn't stink at all. They had a bunch of cattails and other things along the area that became like kind of like a pond, and I was like, God, that seems so brilliant, know. And it was kind of a bit more of like they had it like they said it was like a Japanese system actually, and it kind of dropped. It eddied, but it like dropped into like different waterfall stages, and I was like, wow, it was really mind blowing.
Yeah, Rudolf Steiner. He also was the originator of biodynamic gardening.
Yes.
And water vortex movement to try and support. It can get pretty esoteric, but it's amazing. I don't know if you've ever eaten food from a biodynamic garden.
Yes, I have.
Tastes so good.
Yeah.
Here, basically, so this is from our kitchen, which is the water with grease. We're using water hyacinth, again, to have these roots collect the grease. And then we take these out.
Look at those roots. They look like feathers, don't they?
Yeah, so this is a living... gray water collector specifically focused on extracting the grease from our kitchen. You can see the transparent roof here. So these guys aren't really happy going in grease water, but they collect a lot on those roots, and then we can take them out and hot compost them, and that'll further help break down the grease.
Got it. So does any grease fall to the bottom or anything like that, or is it kind of...
If your sink traps are working well, food shouldn't make it through. The great thing about grease is that it floats on top of water.
Yeah, okay,
so
that makes sense.
That's how we
if
can
you've ever
kind of...
washed a
we take these
dish
out,
with olive oil or...
we can skim these across. We do have grease traps below our sinks in the restaurant, and then another grease trap up there. This is the last one before it gets down here, so there's a series of them before. So then over here, over here we have some primary forest, and then we're moving into secondary forest.
So
And-
just for folks, secondary, it had been cut down at some part of time, and then it's now growing back again.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a forest on steep slope won't have the same height of trees on flat ground, and so you have kind of like a secondary component going on on steep slopes in the tropics because of the amount of rain we have. So when I first came here about 10 years ago, I walked back in this part and I said, oh wow, we've got wind protection from primary forest here. We got the sun moving across this way. We've got gravity flow. I'm going to do a lot of food production here, and I put in a lot of food going on using all of the gray water from the hotel. But I hadn't done enough observation. Again, permaculture principle number 1. And this is a place where all the animals want to walk through because there's people staying up there, so the animals don't walk up. And there's cliff face not too far over there. And so I was trying to do some zone 1 production in a huge animal sector.
Right.
And it was just so frustrating. I was out here all the time chasing animals away.
You'd need to get some kind of fence structure, but even then.
I thought about putting a fence around
Yeah.
here, but that definitely would have been restricting them
from
in a
their
place.
normal place, yeah.
So what we did was, over a series of years, took everything out of here and put it in a new area, which is right next to the parking lot, next to neighbors that have dogs, a lot less traffic of animals, and we put an electric fence around that. So we shifted our high production area to another spot on the property. So this is more zone 3, zone 4 in permaculture, which is fruit production. This is where we grow all of our bananas for the hotel.
And this is all the gray water then coming
So
out.
this is one gray water pond. There's another one here, and then there's another one over there.
Okay.
And then these are terraces that we built using a design process called Aquaculture.
Yes, hugel
which,
mounds. And there's one, is that a cat or? No, that's another coati?
There's a bunch of them there.
Oh yeah, look at them. It's like bring in the animal. I mean, there's 4 or 5 of them I see.
Yeah, there's probably more like 30 of them.
There's like a whole family.
Yeah.
That is funny. They look like cats.
Those are the females and the juveniles. When you see one that's an older male and they're solitary, but sometimes you can...
That's hilarious. From the back, they look like a cat.
Yeah.
Just like a cat with its tail up.
Yeah.
So they're then accustomed to humans here. Would they normally be this non-skittish?
Well, because we're in protection and we don't hunt them, they're
Yeah.
used to us kind of walking around. But in general, they're kind of like a raccoon. They're not very afraid of us. So I tried hugel mounds and they didn't work because of the amount of rain that we get here.
Ah, I see.
So what we
just
did
kind
was,
of dissolve, or?
yeah, the rain would just sort of knock them through. The different animals like those guys, also armadillos, they like to burrow into things.
You get like a groundhog hole or something in the...
Yeah, so what we did here was we dug trenches and filled those full of rotting logs. And
Interesting.
that's what these terraces are here. So that first pond that we walked by, the gray water pond, is right up here. And there's a series of 6 terraces. The water comes to that pond and then it goes down through these terraces. These terraces were dug down a little bit deeper than this one. We left this one open just so people can see what Aquaculture design is. And we filled those terraces full of these rotting logs. So a log that has this density versus one that has this kind of density will decompose at a different rate, housing different generations of microbial activity. These are also like sponges. So this is one of the principles in permaculture that I think I mentioned before, copying the designs or the patterns of the natural environment. So this is basically looking at what's already happening in the forest all around us, but concentrating it to help process our gray water. So as that pond collects the gray water, the water starts moving down through each one of these terraces, hits all those levels of decomposition so that when it enters back into the natural environment, it's actually better than when it entered into the property, because when it entered into the property, it had some chlorine in it and other things. So this is one of the, produce no waste is one of the principles in permaculture. So here, we're producing all the bananas for the hotel, a lot of fruit trees and different things. We feed our chickens bananas, actually.
Oh, really? Do they like them?
They love them, yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It must be a cultural chicken thing, because I've tried to feed chickens bananas and they never like them. And
If you start them early,
yeah.
then they'll get used to it.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a really important tree for us. It's called Watite. I don't know. Again, I didn't take botany. I wish I'd had time, and maybe I will someday to get my Latin together. But
It looks like it's coppiced a bit, like you
yes,
cut it back.
This was actually stuck in the ground on a full moon. So we follow the lunar cycle a lot for planting. A seed, great time to plant a seed that takes 2 weeks to germinate is 2 weeks before the full moon. So just when that seed's coming out, it's catching all the energy of the sun during the day and the energy of the moon at night. Plants hold on to more water on a full moon. So this plant here, and you can see it, it's holding up all of these terraces. It's called Watite. It's an important element of the overall design process because we use it as live fences. We use it to hold up these terraces.
This is what I think a lot of the live fences are that we've been seeing. Like they'll put barbed wire up against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it produces berries a couple times a year, so other birds will come eat those berries. We dehydrate those berries and put them on our pizzas. They're tasty. Also, it has this really spongy bark. You can see.
I felt it. Like I thought it was just the top of it, actually.
Yeah, it feels kind of like cork. So
Yeah.
it holds on to all kinds of moisture. So you can see ferns, different kinds
Moss.
of orchids,
Yeah.
moss, all like to grow on it. So in itself, it's supporting the sort of has a lot of different diverse functionality. There's one right there that you can see that's covered with
Like a
like
philodendron or something.
philodendron
Yeah.
monstera kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, so water comes down, filters down through these terraces. We don't have to water here during dry season. This is a huge sponge, and now...
Which we're actually approaching dry season now, right?
Yep, and then to build the terraces, we just take logs that we find that from blow down in the forest, and we're constantly building them up. The old ones that are decomposed, like this was a log that was probably here at some point, we're just top feeding. So we're no longer like digging down and putting in rotting logs, we're just putting logs on top. One of the great things about bananas is that, well, they're high in potassium, which is one of the main nutrients that plants leave, but they create a lot of mulch, and a huge part of soil health is you always want to have your soil covered. So just chopping and dropping as we come through with the bananas is another way that we can keep a lot of healthy soil to process the gray water as it comes down.
Yeah, I would imagine too here, you don't have an autumn where you would get leaf drop, where you'd have that unhealthy soil, but chopping and dropping, encouraging some of that, moisture retention in here.
Yeah. Yeah, like a piece of decomposing, wood here has trillions of microbes. We don't, 2% of your body weight is microbes. We would be dead if it weren't for microbes. Soil health is the same way. So this is like a little oasis of decomposition.
It's decomposing right in your hands.
It's decomposing in the hands. And you can see all this life force.
Yeah,
this
look at
different
this.
Mycelium.
Yeah.
And,
But this kind of reminds me also, especially when you're digging these trenches, like how some folks would do biochar. And then it gets like these kind of crags similar to that, and then you could, people would bury that and grow like microbes in it.
Yeah, we do biochar here.
Yeah.
We'll see that in a little bit. Biochar, one cubic inch of charcoal, this was something that was told to me, it kind of blew my mind, has the same surface area as a football field.
That's crazy.
So it's like
because it's so porous.
It's so porous, yeah, all it sponges. So we have a bunch of, so as the water comes down through these terraces, mostly what we're growing here is bananas, but then it gets down to this area here where we're doing a little agroforestry, which is growing food in a forest environment.
And you're trying to grow all of your food for the hotel or some of your food for the hotel? How are you managing that?
Yeah, that would be the end goal.
Yeah.
Right now we're at best 30%.
Yeah.
But then the whole farm to table practice is figuring out what other local producers that are nearby that we can support. We're not in a great growing climate. We have extreme sun, extreme rain, extreme wind, extreme animals. I get really jealous just a few hundred meters lower than us.
Yeah.
There's so much more production going on. So again, this is kind of using tourism as an educational component. We're we're never going to be off grid, but we want to show as many different examples of how to do that. And of course, we reduce our
I think a
monthly
lot of folks
expenses.
sometimes get really focused on that being the goal.
Yeah.
When you sound like much more pragmatic about it, because you are running a business and people come through and it might be more than what this land could actually produce, or you might be busting your tail in order to be able to do it, and you'd be,
You have to
spread
look
thin.
at your overall objective. I mean, we're trying to inspire people to get engaged. I'll have sometimes 80 people eating breakfast here. Our chickens will cover the eggs, but I can't grow beans for 80 people in this environment, in this location. So where can I source those locally is part of the whole game.
Yeah. Well, and also you're just supporting, by running your business, you're actually, as you were saying, supporting other people to have their lives enriched as well.
Yep. Yeah. Have you ever tried one of these?
No, this looks like a verbena.
These taste like mushrooms.
Oh, in the aftertaste almost. Here, you have to eat one of these.
Yep. We got 3 different kinds of raspberries, strawberries. There's grapefruit and juicing oranges, tangerines, lemons, cass. This area here is one of our classroom spaces. So when our permaculture design course comes through, we take this all down and then they redo it. And so this is top mulching and agroforestry sort of design. So this is one of the places the students get to work.
And are these students that come in locally, are they staying here then? How does that kind of...
No, our nonprofit advertises the courses on a national and international level. We have people from Colombia, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico, most people from Costa Rica.
Yeah.
It's an application process. It's not open to everybody. They have to we select for people that are coming from vulnerable communities or people that are already engaged in change in some way. And then we have daycare, which is great. So we got single parents that can come. And then we have programs for the kids at the same time, which is a lot of fun and it gives a whole sense of community during the course.
Do you know what this plant, what you were kind of heading at, but...
This is called boton de oro, and it's chicken food.
Interesting. So you just give them the greens and stuff.
Yeah. And it's also a good mulch. It's a chop and drop. You can see the flowers over there.
It's like an asteraceae, like a sunflower.
This is another really important part of the whole design process. This is vetiver. So whenever you're looking at the different elements you want to have in your design, trying to figure out how many different functions you can stack. And so this one is great for erosion control. The roots are aromatic, which we use for keeping bugs off of things. And it's just a chop and drop mulch. So you can just kind of come in and cut it. And then here you can see, just put it down.
Right.
So,
I mean, but look at it's so beautiful, like the soil.
Yeah.
And it's very crumbly too, you know?
Yep.
It looks like it almost looks like a vermicompost to me, where it comes out from the vermicomposter.
Yeah, there might be some biochar in here somewhere. So different aromatics mixed in here also to try and keep the bugs out. One of the hopes by having aromatics in a food production area is that some insects might come in. This area over here is a forest compost. So we compost here specifically to try and collect the energy of the forest, the microbes of the forest.
So you're covering it in order to protect it from some of the rain?
Yeah,
So it doesn't get waterlogged.
Exactly, just to keep it from the rain from leaching out all of the life that's going on in there. We will come down here every once in a while and add some nitrogen, which is usually from our chickens, and heat it up and then cover it up and then collect the soil, take it to our production areas, and this is, I think, some finished soil here.
Very nice. Look at how black that is.
Yeah. And you can see some eggshells from our chickens.
Yeah.
And some biochar, charcoal.
Fantastic.
These
hulls of
these are
coconuts,
which are great. They hold on to a lot of
water.
A lot of water. Bananas the same way. You can chop up banana and put it in the ground during dry season, and it will be all these little water reservoirs inside. Designing for a viable future is looking at your protein production, but trying to have that in as small space as possible. So like growing mushrooms, Here we're doing aquaculture, which is tilapia, which we sell at and then chickens. You don't have to cut a lot of trees down for chickens or for tilapia.
Right.
So
And tilapia doesn't need that much water.
No.
Either.
Yeah.
Can we take a look?
yeah, as you head over there, you might see them, but they'll jump down to the bottom once they recognize you guys.
And I learned Costa Rica is a big producer of tilapia as well.
Yeah, sadly, most of the production comes from plastic-lined containers, which means you also might need to give them antibiotics and other things. These are all clay-lined ponds.
So do you have a lot of clay here, or did you have to truck that in order to be able to?
We had to move some clay around, but thankfully we do have a lot of clay here. So
most people would not say, thankfully, we have a lot of clay.
well, in terms of building ponds, it helps a lot. So this one, we put up a couple of speakers. After we dug down to the clay line, we put up some speakers, invited some friends, and everybody danced and did a whole compaction. You want to have the walls of your pond at around 45 degrees so that you can kind of create this big bowl. One of the things about tilapia is they like to burrow in on the sides, which can create steeper sides, which then can increase filtration. So you make your big bowl during the end of rainy season, you let it sit in the sun for a while, kind of set up, and then you put in the last couple-inch cap of clay on it, and that seals really well. Eventually there will be some filtration, so we drain these, collect all of that nutrient-rich soil from the bottom, put it in our compost, and then reseal them and then do that. The reason we have a couple here is so that we can kind of adjust. So we might put our big ones over there or put new ones here.
Now
and then that pond over there, we're getting ready to plant something called a zola, which is an aquatic plant that we're going to use for feeding our next fry that we bring in so that we can be growing our own food here for them.
Now, what's happening here with the water coming out? Like, where is that water coming from?
Yeah, so there's a tank over here.
Right in the forest.
So this is a reserve tank that comes from a spring that's on the corner of the property. By collecting in a big tube and then reducing that tube size, we can get it over here, fill this up, and then when we open this up, what that does is that water gravity feeds through some pipes over here, and then there's a check valve here, and that siphons the water out of the tilapia ponds, and then that drips the water, which is a mix of that spring water and tilapia water, which is high in nitrogen and other micronutrients, onto these garden beds. So aquaculture is growing fish protein or fish to eat, and then mixing that fish water to fertilize your plants. And so these different beds are also built with that hugelkultur design. So we dug down, filled it full of rotting logs. And right now we're growing mostly aromatics here. And this is a little bit abandoned at the moment because we've been focusing most of our production in the greenhouses, getting ready for our next high season. But there's a bunch of different things, rosemary, there's some more rose geranium and onions, garlic, ginger, there's turmeric, things that the forest doesn't want to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like you got some ants here too. They're just
so those are leafcutter ants.
Yeah.
They're impossible to deal with. What you can do is suggest that they move, and so we've been suggesting that they slowly move over there by trying to drown them out, keep this area too wet.
They would aerate the soil, though, I would imagine.
They aerate the soil. This is what the indigenous would use, from what I've been told, to build adobe. So
fascinating.
It's
oh wow! Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Also high in iron, and this can be used as a micronutrient for making different soil amendments.
I mean, they're farming fungus, right? So they're like, hey, you have the farm right here. Why don't we have our farm right here too?
Yeah, and they don't eat aromatics. So, growing things here that they're not growing, that we can use, that they're not using is part of the balance. But these guys are amazing. You can go into hours of discussion about leafcutter ants. If humans organized themselves like leafcutter ants, we'd be in a much better situation. So this area here, in terms of the sort of trail design, there's a guy named Vox who helped design Central Park and other parks in the U.S. I think with a designer named Homestead.
Yeah,
if I'm correct.
Homestead,
Homestead.
yeah.
And so
Oh, wow, look at that view.
one of the things they always did was they'd have you go through narrow spaces before
Yeah.
you came to a big view. And we've done that in a bunch of spots with the hopes that people will get to a view spot and be like, whoa, we need to protect this. How can we get engaged?
Yeah, because it's a point of like where it seems breathtaking, you know?
Yep. This is just at the end of our last storm, so we need to get back here and clean up a little bit. This last one brought a lot of weather off of the Pacific Ocean towards Costa Rica, but it was actually a hurricane that was moving up the Caribbean.
Yeah, Hurricane Patty, I thought it was, or maybe. Wow, look at that valley. The topography here is just so stunning, you know, especially coming from San Jose and the city and then just working your way up. It's dramatic.
Yeah, and just because I know it's there, I can see the ocean, but that's the Pacific Gulf and Coria. Right there. Yeah, so sometimes we'll have different gathering points. If we get a little bit confused up in the office space, we might come down here and have a meeting. We also have weddings and events here. Yeah, so these are all the Watite posts holding up these beds. And this is our hammock garden area. We need to put our hammocks out now that rainy season is on its way out. So where we just walked through, a lot of that was high production. It's now shifted to aromatics, things that the forest doesn't want to eat, fruit trees, more of a zone 3, zone 4. Over here is our zone 1 production area. So these are our chickens.
I hear them.
Yeah, we'll walk in, we'll see those guys.
They're getting excited, laying the eggs.
This is our workshop area, which is full of things as we're getting ready for high season. Hola, Jaime. Buenos dias. So this is what we call our soil lab. This is kind of our farm headquarters. Inside here is Maria. She's a University of Earth graduate, agronomist. In here is where we have our seed bank and our farm plan and different tasks that we do and equipment that we use, projects from previous permaculture design courses, which is usually a series of maps. So this is like the same one we started with up in reception. This is a sector analysis for a property. And then here is looking at zoning for a property. And then here is looking at topography and watershed. So one of the things that's fun about the courses that we have here is we go out and find different cool community projects and offer them a design. So the students get to have a real client experience.
Yeah.
And at the end of the course, present it. So we've done some here for the Monteverde Institute, for a place called Life Monteverde, for different farms. And
this is kind of like the old school GIS layer system, you know?
Yeah, we try and do it without a lot of computers because people might not have computers where they're going back to in the world. And then if they do, they can, of course, apply it to that. And then this is where we start mixing things together.
Look at those girls.
Yeah. So we talk about regenerative agriculture versus degenerative, so supporting soil health. We talk about what happens when you constantly chop soil up and spray herbicides, fungicides, and pesticides. You get compacted soil, so you reduce the amount of oxygen you can get, which reduces the amount of life in there. Versus there we have healthy soil, 20 to 30% oxygen. A lot of people don't realize that soil has the same oxygen as atmospheric oxygen. It's, when it's healthy and it's left to do what it needs to do. And of course, that's what provides all the nutrients for plants. So here we have, this is kind of like your backyard compost tumbler, but a
Right.
little bit more industrial. So we'll pre-compost things from the kitchen here, and then that gets fed to our worms.
Wow.
One of the things worms love is watermelon skin. So these are California
So
red
these are like
wigglers.
little red wigglers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then does it drop down to here, or this is another?
This is another one, and there's
Okay.
another one, and then
Okay.
eventually we collect the liquid along the bottom,
Okay.
and then the castings out of here.
Wow, this is quite the production, Jonah. This is impressive.
Yeah, these are all of our, thank you. Yeah, these are all of our bioinsumos, so these are all ferments. Here we have biochar. This is solids and some liquids. So this is basically a trap so that bacteria can't
Right,
get back
and then
in.
this is anaerobic.
solids is anaerobic, and yes, most
Yeah.
of them we're keeping the oxygen out of
Okay.
it. This is our sugar source for all of those, so we use a byproduct of molasses sugar production. These are this is what we do most of our foliate fertilization is with these pumps. Also our EM5, as I was talking about, our pest repellent that we spray on the plants. These guys are hoping for
Some smickles,
some
some little nums.
snacks. This is where we keep our bananas in here. This is what we make our biochar with.
Okay, so you burn it in here.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
get some hardwood, make a really hot fire, and then push rocks along the base and cut off the oxygen.
Ah, okay.
And
And
also
let it
sort
set
of,
for like how long do you usually let it set for?
once we have the charcoal, we might put it in one of those containers with microbes for a month.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. And then this is what we make a lot of our mulch with that the plant vetiver, the type of grass I was talking about. So this is
So it just comes in and cuts it, chops it
yeah,
finely?
we just feed it through the other
Yeah.
side and chop it up. These are some more worms. So here you can see the worm juice that we're collecting.
Yep.
So you can use that as 1 part that to 30 part spring water, and use that as a
As a
really
fertilizer
powerful
spray.
fertilizer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see here they're
Oh, they are just happy.
yeah.
They're like, throw us some.
Yeah, well, what we're trying to do is grow enough for these guys to hopefully be part of their protein source.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah, get that worm. Usually I'm like, save the worms, but now I'm like, feed them to the chickens.
They also love bananas.
Oh, that is that smells quite fermented in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these things over here is a design we came up with. We call them bug catchers. So we take fresh compost or things from the kitchen, bring it down here and put it in one of these boxes. And the chickens get in there, they start eating it, pooping on it, mixing it around. And then we have these tops that we made for these boxes, and we cover them up. And then you can see we drilled these little holes in the side of them. And so what happens when they're covered is they fill full of flies. And so black soldier flies, all kinds of flies.
And then you could feed them.
And then every 2 weeks we open it up and we have a big protein buffet. It's just
Right.
we're not producing black soldier flies,
Yeah.
but we are catching a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it works for a long time. Just open it up, have them eat it, close it, another 2 weeks, and then we rotate through these different boxes.
Amazing.
Yeah. So those holes we drilled in the side are too small for mice to get in, but just the right size for bugs to get in. Here with 5 to 6% of the world's biodiversity, a lot of that is insects. So that's a lot of protein. This is all finished compost, and there's some, I think from here to there is bokashi, and there's other things. So this is just soil that's waiting to be used. These are some hay bale compost areas that we also use for drying product. You don't want to put mulch on the ground when it's really green. It's better to wait till it turns brown so that you're not pulling nitrogen out of the soil. So this is also where we will cut vetiver. And these are different sacks of. So this is the vetiver, which is all the things holding up the bank there. So this is our main mulch that we use. And then we have 3 different greenhouses. We collect the rainwater off of the greenhouses. That goes into this big tank here, and then that pump pumps it to another tank that's way up at the top, but that's the tallest point of the property up there. That goes through a pipe, and that's where we mix in all of the bioinsumos, the natural fertilizers that come out of the microbe production, and then that drip feeds into these greenhouses.
Are these trees that you're like replanting in the area or that you've taken cuttings of? Or?
These are all we've taken cuttings
Yeah.
of, yeah. This is katuk, this is a type of hibiscus. They have a little bit of sulfur on them right now to try and keep the mushrooms and mold from growing on them.
How about this? So these you've just really mounded up.
Yep, these are
And
mounded
the
up.
vetiver is in the center.
The vetiver is in the
Yeah.
center, yeah. This is non-till. This is the same soil that's always been here, but we're constantly adding
Yeah.
microbes to it.
And this is stuff that you're growing for food for the restaurant.
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic.
And then this is a shade system, so on a day of strong sun, we can.
And you have these to like protect from slugs, or what are these?
Yeah, these are bug catchers.
Bug catchers,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and those are slug catchers?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this has a double door, basically, because we want to try and keep the bugs out as much as possible. And then having aromatics in this doorway kind of helps keep them from getting too interested to coming in.
Oh, you have a lot of these, huh?
These are the same greenhouses that we have in the local schools.
Yeah.
So this comes from the water off of the ponds above, and gravity feeds after at that point up there. And this is where we do most of our lettuce. And then we're back here where we started.
Thank you so much, Jonah. This
Yeah.
has been phenomenal. I am really impressed
welcome.
with what you're doing here.
Thanks for coming
The
by.
amount of thought and infrastructure that has gone into this is just impressive. And over the course of 10 years, I guess.
Yeah, well, with a lot of help.
Yeah, a lot of help.
A lot of help, yeah. We got
Wow.
a great team here, so.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks for your interest in what we're doing, and enjoy the rest of your time in Costa Rica.
We will.